This is Sean McVeigh at the National Soil Survey Center. I'm the National Training Coordinator, and welcome you to today's webinar, Changes to the National Soil Survey Handbook, Parts 608, 610, and I guess there's part of 601 included in this one too. Today's webinar, you'll be in broadcast mode only, meaning only the presenters can speak. We'll take questions at the end, and of course, like some of our other format that you've had with webinars, to ask a question, you'll key that in on the Q&A tab at the top of the live meeting frame. You can put in one question at a time, and then once we answer that and read it out, then you can ask another question that way. Just a limitation of the system, one question at a time. And we'll read those questions at the end and follow up with people at that time. Our presenters today are going to be Cam Lurch, National Leader for Soil Survey Standards, and Roy Fick, the Associate Director for Soil Operations. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Cam.
All right, thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. Yes, welcome. I'll just say our intention today is to bring some, to highlight and bring attention to the folks in the Soil Science Division and folks working on soil survey, ecological site inventories, that are working in our Soil Division. Some proposed changes that we've got in place that are going on with the Soil Survey Handbook in order to bring them in line with this reorganization. And so what we will be going through today is pretty much a high-cut general overview of where some changes have taken place. I would say that what we've got going on is we have posted, there's been some work done in reviewing the different handbook parts. So and most specifically 608 and 610, and we focused in on 608 because that has program management, and that has a lot of what our operating procedures and processes will be. We put it out for some review and to get comments back. And first we started kind of just with some of the leadership here, and we moved that out, state soil scientists, got some feedback, and actually did some modifying of it or taking into consideration some of those edits at that time, but also then have reposted it, and it's up on our website that has it's our technical references National Soil Survey Handbook, and we have had it out there. And at the last, you probably heard, I had mentioned get some comments into me by like the end of April, and I do appreciate I did get a few comments in. I will say that up till now, this is, for some reason, this month has been quite hairy and hectic, and pretty much have not done and incorporated those comments into, let's say, our discussion today, unless it comes up on the side. So just want to say we want to go through and do kind of a high cut on that, and I think what I will do is ask Roy if he wants to have any little comments prior to getting started.
Yes, Cam. We'll start off the presentation mainly on the handbooks, parts 608 and 610, but we did toss in a little bit some of the other directives that are being changed along with it. 601 kind of did play along with the other sections. Plus, as part of the agency reorganization, each section at headquarters had to go through and revise certain sections of the general manual, and that's all based on the announcement the chief made a week or so ago. So might see some comments that have more to do other than those two sections of the handbook, but we will focus on that.
Okay, and do we want to mention that as far as updates to the handbook becoming official, let's just say, there's some decisions that are still yet to be made with the reorganization that need to take place first. Is that correct, Roy?
Yes, so we're going to hold off on all these until we have the final implementation of the realignment of the soil survey offices. So we're holding these in preparation until the actual implementation takes place.
Okay, I just want folks to know that. Okay, I'll get started here, go through a little background. It's always good to have a little bit of a summary, but a lot of why we're here today is that there was a committee last year that was formed to take a look at regionalizing the soil survey, an implementation or an improvement team, an improvement plan. And there was a decision memo signed by the chief last year in March on regionalizing soil survey. And I guess essentially that what was selected, probably good to mention that, but essentially it was the option that was selected is kind of referenced the reduced numbers of soil survey offices and MOs, which are now regional offices, with soil survey operations and the regional offices and soil survey offices under the Soil Science Division. Basically moves to a full-scale regionalization. Direct line of supervision comes under the Soil Science Division, and it goes on, and then the rest of them come in a little bit later here. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that with this decision memo and impacts from it, we need to have our agency directives in line, and apparently that's pretty much what Roy just said. I need to tell you that in putting this together, Roy put together the slides, and I'm the one who's going to is giving it. So we're right on line with that. So anyway, there's some changes that updates the general manual. We're going to be talking about the National Soil Survey Handbook pretty much today, and there are activities, as you know, going on with the Soil Ecological Site Handbook. So with the general manual, as Roy was mentioning, there's been a recent agency-wide reorganization, and every part of that had to be reviewed. And in the, I guess this 360 is more HR type of zone, but there was some subparts and that were dealt with. And Roy, I guess I'll actually let you talk specifics of that, if you want.
Certainly, because they talk about state office staffs, how area offices and state offices are structured, and mainly it was put in there to revise role of the state soil scientists. In fact, we did add some material to that to actually include some of the actual responsibilities to spell them out a little bit better of what they're involved in. Subpart G talked about offices. Some of those might have been watershed planning offices as standalones. The soil survey offices were added as an entity. And then the soil survey regional offices, formerly MOs, as a subsection of the soil science division. So it's mainly under the personnel section talking about the organization of the agency. General Manual Part 430, which is more specific, the soil survey, revised that of the teacher.
Right, and that has our subpart A and B, which gets into our titles and our purposes and our different management teams or organization. So there's also work being going on with the Ecological Site Handbook. Most of you are familiar with Susan and her staff and others that have been working on that. Basically, it is designed to be around our organizational structure with MLRA soil survey offices and our regional offices. It's going to highlight the operating procedures and those making efforts to keep them in line or as similar as they can with our operating procedures in our handbook, Soil's handbook. You've had some first sections are out, recently been open for comment. I'm not sure if those have been closed or not. They have been closed, someone in the room. And as they complete other sections, those will be out for review. So getting back to the specifics of the decision memo of the chief, it did mention in there that each state would have a state soil scientist. It identifies that role, that state soil scientist would lead and coordinate the technical soil services in the state. It leads the National Cooperative Soil Survey efforts within the state, that they are the principal contact for all the cooperators and identifying the needs of the state through the different state agencies and other cooperators. And by doing such, one of the ways to do that is to conduct some annual state work planning conferences or whatever kind of frequency that is done on. And then also, there's a need to work closely with the soil survey offices and the regions to help coordinate what the state's needs are. So it's coordinating the needs. And so these type of things, what are your needs for soil survey? What are the needs for, updating the soil surveys and soils information? And again, what kind of additional technical services are needed. And I believe there is some discussion going on how best to communicate in order to have, states get assistance from the MLRA soil survey offices in some of their needs when it comes to tech soil services. I don't have those specifics there, but I know that's been discussed, and I believe there is maybe a bulletin that would come out on that at some point in time once the reorganization takes place. Is that correct too, Roy?
Yes, I'm drafting the bulletin, and like these other directives, we're holding off until the actual implementation of the structure.
Okay. I might just add that this working closely with the offices, that's via participation and activity and different roles that take place within the structure of this management team, and through encouragement of folks not on the MLRA soil survey office staff to be participants in these tech teams that we will be talking about. So one of the things that was brought out in the decision memo was that there was a need to come up with advisory teams at different levels to help provide kind of a review, ensure that the operations of the soils operations are relevant to the agency mission and conservation needs. One of the, I believe, under construction, I see we got under construction here, so it's not maybe developed yet, but there was talk where state conservationists would provide feedback to regional offices through a regional advisory board. And also at a national level, looking at advisory teams that would be made up of state cons, regional cons, and deputy area representatives. That is what's definitely under construction or being discussed. And I don't know with the new chief just how they are doing that. But I do know that state conservationists, through what we will be talking about later here, Board of Advisors, do provide some regional feedback, at least to our soil survey regional offices.
So Cam, our plan here at the national level is to work through the office of the regional conservationist and try to do the design from that level and try to see how it is that they want to be able to provide feedback at the national level. So that's our plan up here.
Okay. And our division has been renamed to the Soil Science Division. Now, National Soil Survey Handbook update. In fact, some of the updates that are common to all sections related to terminology. We've gone through and tried to update the titles of individuals and Soil Survey Regional Directors, which were formerly MO leader, is what the new title is. And that came through when there was the reclassification of the position descriptions, that some of the rules and criteria used for some of the terminology, they said using leader is not appropriate, so here's what you need to use. And so to move the process forward, we went to that approach. So that being the case, changed MO region and changed it to soil survey region. Board of Advisors, as I mentioned in the decision memo, there was talk of having these advisory boards that help provide that are key, advisory boards that are key for coordinating tech support needs and services that need to be delivered or will be delivered from the division and the different offices within the division. So it was board of directors, so now there is sort of a redefinition of the role of that state conservationist, but one of the primary functions is going to be provide as a feedback mechanism to the regional directors and to headquarters. Let's see, ecological site specialists were updated, titles and whatnot to mirror the ecological site handbook. Essentially, other titles remain the same other than maybe some minor changes. We added ecological sites to our National Cooperative Soil Survey responsibilities of the soil survey offices, because we are now also have those roles to help coordinate development, improvement, update, and inventory of the ecological sites. sure anybody can hear you. The which? And we're also working on the ecological site inventory database development and data elements and appropriate actions follow there, how to get it documented. State soil scientist, there was some rewording in the roles. Obviously, rewording of roles took place to account for supervision. There will be supervision change once this 1010 package goes through. I think that's one of our major parts there. And we'll get into a few other specifics when we get into, I think, we'll talk about some other 608. So survey regional offices. One of the, I think, instead of referencing that there is this region-wide MOU, one of the, I think, key components to how state soil scientists, regional directors, and you know, and let me just say, management team and board of advisors, and how they will be interacting with tech teams in here is the standard operating procedures being developed. These standard operating procedures essentially need to be developed, taking into account the needs and the situation and that occur within your region. So it could be slightly different from one region to another. This is my take on that. It's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all, other than you do need to have some clear operating procedures of how you're going to be communicating. Maybe with having some base criteria first. And added ecological site inventory. There you go. Under the responsibilities of the regional offices. All right. So others was adding technical responsibility at national headquarters. I don't know, Roy, do you want to speak to that one? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I just noticed that was in there, and then the Part 601, the fact that really there wasn't any specifics outlined on how national headquarters is a leader in certain information that's utilized by other people, specifically Agriculture Research Service, universities, and development of all these models that the rest of the agency and other people use on how the responsibility actually lies at headquarters for that information.
Okay, it was just sort of highlighting that, getting it in there. It hadn't been in there before. There was a renaming of the National Geospatial Management Center, and it was renamed the National Geospatial Center of Excellence. Perhaps I don't think that was in there maybe in the past. So maybe, or was it just that the name was changed and the functions are very similar to what they have been. We added ecological site inventory and the handbook to have the soil survey center responsibilities. Now, as we move to Part 608, program management. I guess we're doing kind of a high cut of some of the things and pretty much just highlighting where there's been additions or some changes that we would like you actually to take a look at and still provide some feedback. But there was a new position that's been developed under NHQ, which is Associate Director for Soil Operations. This is to go in line with, to be our direct line supervision. That individual is Roy Vick, but they supervise the regional directors of the regional soils offices and work that way with the operations. So that was created. Regional offices. Communicate, let's see, part of the regional offices, the role is there will be a board of advisors, and the role of the regional director there is to help kind of coordinate and to ensure that there is, communications with this board of advisors. But that would be the way to communicating with the state conservationists is going to be via that. And so the regional office provides the support to help, conduct some of the business and make sure that they have the support needed to conduct the meetings and move on from there. I also coordinate the activities of the management teams. And here's where I was talking about before. Standard operating procedures. You know, what I guess we envision is that state soil scientists with the regional office director, plus whatever other cooperators might be involved with that management team, need to get together, come up with what is there going to be their, spell out their specifics of the business steps, structure of it. And I mean by structure is there's been some talk in some areas where there's one management team for the whole regional office, and in others there's a management team that could be specific to an MLRA soil survey office area. So when that's in place, and if it's working good, that's the type of stuff that needs to be brought out and communicated to spell out what your structure is going to be. And then responsibilities head along the same ways. Responsibilities would highlight and outline, okay, what's the best way to have, if you want to call it chairmanship, but would work through that way. So regional officers need to coordinate that taking place, and then in the same sense, the activities of the management teams. Also, regional officers, that's where they certainly a review and approval of project plans, the specific project plans. They'll be coordinating mapping goals and progress reporting, and supervising the MLRA soil survey on leaders. Assume then a survey leader supervise everybody that's on the staff out there in their soil survey office. And the regional office is going to be providing administrative support to the soil survey offices. This would be, I believe, one of these items, Roy, that still is in the process of design with our administrative reorganization. That just how that's going to happen is still yet to be determined.
That is correct, because we're learning these as the weeks go on, exactly how they're designing administrative functions. But the point there was we would have an administrative assistant who would be processing timesheets and travel, keeping track of properties. A lot of those things that might have been done in the states, that function will move over to administrative assistant for each region.
Okay. So under program management, still, Board of Advisors. These are some of our different organizational structures, but made up of state conservationists. And I believe in some areas it's applicable that you have representatives from federal, state, universities, or some other type of partners. I don't know specifically those situations, but they exist out there. And the role would be is provide some broad management direction back to the soil survey regional director and to the management teams. I view, I don't know if that's on the next one here, but certainly management team, through the process of tech teams, bringing to the attention, here's some needs, here's some priorities. Management teams will be looking at that and say, here are some priorities that we concur with. Those get reviewed by the Board of Advisors. Oh, it's on down? Okay. Never mind. John tells me it's on down. So we'll get to that a little later. I'll revisit that. So anyway, also needs to be a function that reviews progress and performance and makes sure that for both soil survey and ecological site activities, and basically help to ensure that it's meeting the objectives and needs of both the agency and their states. So the Board of Advisors will be providing feedback to the Associate Director for Soil Operations, which is Roy. So it would get that feedback and use that in when he's doing his performance reviews for his regional directors. And here's where it goes to review the management team recommendations on project priorities. And I think what I see as management team doing is helping to, well, and this is Board of Advisors, but they're going to be looking at the project priorities. So sort of like, here's a high level of priority that we need to work on. Here's one. Now, we concur that that's a good direction to go with. And that they've determined they're in balance with state and national issues. And if what they're getting presented isn't hitting the target, certainly need to be providing some good, they'll provide some alternative advice, which to, and on how to, what needs to be addressed. So management teams, excuse me, they're made up of or consist of soil survey regional directors, state soil scientists, state resource conservationists, other appropriate state tech leaders, federal, state, university, and other partners as applicable. I really feel that the amount of time we've been in, at least from 2005, there's been a focus on having management teams. It's been in our terminology, so this certainly is not anything, I don't think, new to anybody, and hopefully you have them up and running and system that's working. That's the makeup. Essentially develops, like I said, they want to probably if you don't have in place already or not, but you need to develop some specific operating procedures which outline the structure, chairmanship, and roles of the members of the management team. Again, review and concur with tech team recommendations on the priorities. And here's where, as a management team, there could be some discussions about how addressing some of the needs, supplementing the needs of technical soil services in the states can be done and helped and coordinated with the utilizing MLRA Soil Survey Office staff. Now we get down to our technical teams. Now, again, in our terminology and in our approach to do and update soil survey activities and soil survey activities, there's been an encouragement to have technical teams established and developed. And here where you have your MLRA Soil Survey Office staff, certainly there should be some regional office staff representatives. It could be an ecological site. I guess quality assurance person. You certainly would have your quality control or inventory individual. State soil scientists can participate through, well, I think a lot of times we had like an assistant state soil scientist. I know some of that structure perhaps is changing a little bit, but we certainly want to get resource soil scientists involved and our partners, local DCs, get involved so that they can get their needs represented at that local field level, actually. I like to think that any one of those individuals can sponsor a need or a project to address some needs. Soil Survey Office Leader, this is one where we actually said Soil Survey Office Leader does serve as the chair of that tech team. Can you wait questions for later, George? There's 100 other folks. That'd be best. Anyway, and ensures that you actually get one established. Tech team gets established. So the tech team's roles are responsibility to gather and consolidate each state's needs that have been developed, get those compiled, put them into a long-range plan, develop proposed priorities at this time still, so you're just kind of grouping them into priorities, assist the soil survey leader to draft plans. So essentially, you would have some priorities identified and then actually have some project plans that would go through some type of a management team review and just formulate some recommendations for regional office approval of, I guess it would be either your priorities and or some plans. So, state offices. We did go through, again, an earlier slide, more of the roles of the state soil scientist, if you recall that. But in our Part 608, what we have added to, as part of our, as program management, we have added to state soil scientists and state resource conservationists as being a part of our structure. And the roles of the two together, other than, providing support to the state conservationists and input into each of their programs, is provide technical and ecological site services and develop interpretations. and serve on the management teams. And again, the specific role of those management teams are in the operating procedures. Digitizing units. Those were essentially consolidated into existing structure, and the responsibility of those digitizing units have been moved to the Soil Survey regional offices. Plans are that each Soil Survey regional office has a GIS individual to provide that assistance. And Roy, it looks like there was a national bulletin issued not that long ago that spelled out specifics on that. Do you know anything to add on that?
No, just saying that deals with the transition from moving from the existing digitizing unit, digitizing staff over to each of the Soil Survey regional offices, providing quality assurance and processing, and then procedures for also the bulletin talks about how to get your soil surveys through the certification process for the rest of the fiscal year.
Okay. Digital map finishing. It's been determined that that's a function that will be retained for, there's still some initial soil surveys going on, and there are still some approved extensive revisions going on where, there was some commitments made to deliver certain products. I believe that most of the staff that are experienced and involved with that are in various offices, and those are either at a soil survey office or regional offices. Maybe even some that are in state offices. Anyway, so if you have some digital map finishing needs, you do need to coordinate that to the regional offices, and I'm sure that they will figure out a way to get that taken care of or get it scheduled and get it worked on. Part 610, and actually 610, when it comes to some of this organizational structure and processing of business steps, a lot of the reference right back to 608. It says go see 608.01 or just 608.05 when it talks about setting a priority or approving a project or moving forward that way. But also updating soil surveys. We updated the 610 probably a year. Time goes fast, but probably a year ago. Here, just on a side note, I think I've been in this position now 2.5, going on 3 years, and every year we've been doing some revisions to both of these parts of the handbook. So we're kind of a constant flux. Yeah. But anyway, updating soil surveys. We've identified in there that there's some different, well, first off, updating activities are all done on a series of projects. And those projects are designed to address priority needs that have been identified. Obviously, we've had this year this national initiative to do soil data recorrelation and joining. So projects have been focused in on that. That is one priority, not the only one. Just put that out there. But the soil survey offices develop their projects based on priority needs, and that's how we do business. And so there's different update strategies, and one of them that's in there is this MLRA recorrelation of attribute data. And this we have put together, there's a national instruction that's been developed and online under national instructions. And what we did was in the handbook right now, where we have referenced to it when you come into that part, we give some general overview of the steps of this activity, of the recorrelation or joining activities of the data. So we've added that in there. So that's one type of project. The other type is if there's kind of generally, if you're thinking if you need to go to the field, do any kind of field work, that it spins into a project, but it's called an MLRA field project. And in that case, you would identify what activities are going to take place and what you needed to do, whether it was transects, collect some lab data. what have you. And then there's a series of other type of strategies which ends up with this extensive revision, and under that I believe we say something like we're certainly trying to have fewer and fewer, or actually none of those, because we'd like to have anything that needs that be tied to a group of map units or a landscape that needs to be worked on and updated.
Yeah, and that's been in there a while, Cam, so that wasn't a change this time around.
Okay. Wow. So we're at questions. We'll see how this part goes.
And again,
Appreciate.
the way you ask a question is you can key it in using the Q&A tab at the top of your live meeting frame. We'll give our people online a chance to put in their questions. Are there any questions here in the room? And if there are, I'd ask you to come up here so you get it recorded. So come on up.
Oh, it was the chair of the technical team. Okay.
Yeah, I had a question of the technical team, where the project leader, soil survey office leader is the chair, but he's going to potentially have members of the team that are senior to him in the chain. I just wonder what kind of steps are going to be taken to mitigate the potential for state soil scientists to come down hard on soil survey project leader, even though he doesn't have any supervisory control over it. There may be, I'm just a little bit worried about some new influence.
I just hope that cooler heads would prevail and people would be professional and work as appropriate. The tech team is there to be providing advice and counsel and help support and help, come up with the priorities. I think then bump that to the management team. And Roy, maybe you chime in on that.
Yeah, I think you covered that okay, Cam.
Thanks.
All right, we've got several online questions. You want to go ahead and take this first one?
I can hardly read it. The one that's, oh. Okay, so the proposed 608 state NRCS program inputs from the state conservationist and state soil science level are reduced from approving projects, okay, to providing concurrence and alternate advice by the Board of Advisors or management teams. The state soil scientists are removed from the Soil Survey Office management team leaders from 2 MOY's management team members. Why was this necessary?
You want me to comment on that, Cam?
Sure.
Well, I'd say the first part, I guess it comes down to it's because of the supervision and management and accountability. The funding and supervision are coming down to the soil science division. The actual approval and accountability has to be through the soil survey regional director. So that was the reason it was changed from approving to concurrence. Second, state soil scientists, in the region, if there are, say there's 7 soil survey offices within a region, and you decide to have 7 management teams, the chairmanship of that is determined under the operating procedures. So within that region, they may decide that the state soil scientist has always been considered the host state soil scientist for that office. Could be the leaders. They probably already have the majority of the acreage to the location of the office.
Okay.
All right, our next question. Regarding the digitizing responsibilities, how has training and distribution of required models, toolboxes, and software to be handled? Where do we go for technical support?
I'd have to defer that, Roy.
I can't answer that. That's a very technical question. The plan is that the technical expertise and the way we've written the position description for the 12 regional GIS specialists, it includes those responsibilities of training and distribution of different tools. So that is the plan. It's not implemented yet because in many cases we got different skill levels out there. But the plan is for that actually to go to the regional office.
Okay, that sounds good. So
And Roy, could you talk to us about what the current status of the 1010 package is in Congress?
That's a really good question because it's again under the departmental review process of their writing a transmittal letter to go up to Congress. And there's a certain amount of time that they're allotted to actually write the letter and take care of that, moving the document up for their review. And then there's a 30-day period in which to receive it back. So we're kind of stuck there waiting for the department. Correspondence control has all been done, so we're waiting on them. And I believe they have 30 days in which to act on that.
All right. Our next question, when will the administrative tasks be turned over to the regional offices and therefore Soil Survey offices handed over to the regional or the region's directors?
pretty much follows along with what the last question was, right, with the 1010 package?
Well, there's yes, but there's a couple of things to look at. One of them, administrative tasks, be it routine things like processing of travel vouchers and timesheets and all that. When the supervision is changed over to the regional offices, and all the coding and all that will switch over as far as the responsibility for handling those records. Since we're so far along in the fiscal year, the decision as far as administrative support, as far as human resources, contracting, and other administrative tasks, we give a tremendous amount of money to each of the states in the 64T offset to cover that. And then there were additional funds that were given to each state for support for equipment supplies, training, travel, those kind of things. And that was based on the number of people that soil survey offices are actually located in the state. So for the second half of the continuing resolution, we did just as the first half, and any switch over to a different budget structure is going to take place and is projected from the start of fiscal year 2014.
All right, our next question deals with types of projects. Is there a distinction between the field projects and the upgate project, or are they the same thing?
I can take a shot at this. I'm going to say that if that update project is assigned to a specific set of map units and our landscape and involves field work to accomplish that, that's what we are referring to as our MLRA field projects in this update strategy. So in that sense, they are the same.
And then the only thing I can think would be different would be, I know the handbook talks about updating the attribute data, and that's been in there for some time in the MLRA project, and of course I guess that's pretty well cemented in place with the soil data joint correlation, which is a large-scale update project that is dealing with revising and joining attribute data versus a field one without taking measurements and sampling.
I think I may have done something bad and caused some of our questions to disappear, but our next question is, who's responsible for digital map finishing and manuscript publication? Who prints the manuscript and maps, the state or the Soil Survey region office?
I think I can answer with the maps. It's my understanding that the maps are handled through the states. The states make the contacts needed to do that. Is that sound?
As a recently former state soil scientist, the responsibility of the state soil scientist and state conservationists, if they want to have product delivery other than the electronic format, and the cost of other than the small printing that they might do for hard copy soil survey manuscripts is borne by the state. So if they want to have printing up on hard copy maps, they can work through contracting there at the National Geospatial Center of Excellence, and they can work with their traditional contractors, and they'll be glad to send you a bill.
There's a follow-up question to the types of projects, and those projects named the same in the project table?
That's a Paul Fennell question, unless, Roy, you might know that, or if Paul's online, he could fire in the answer.
I cannot answer that.
It's my understanding we tried, there's always an attempt. So it says,
the standard naming convention, as far as I know, applies to any kind of MLRA project. It starts off with the MLRA, and let's put it in that way. I mean, I've read enough reports, and I've seen how they're done. Yeah, all MLRA projects are named the same.
Our next question is concerning this restructuring is, how will vehicles and equipment be transferred?
has that happened?
No, because I do have a good understanding of this. When all the personnel actions take place, there's a whole new coding system. In fact, the whole agency has a new coding system that's being implemented as far as property and positions and all that. When the personnel actions take place within a region, it allows a whole cascade of other things to take place, and then you can reassign accountability for equipment vehicles to the MLRA regional office. But until the actual personnel structure is changed, we can't change any of the other part as far as that. It will be transferred. We've got staff ready to work on it, strategies on how to do it, but we can't move ahead until we actually get to personnel actions.
All right, and then I guess a similar vein, this next question, will all resource soil scientists report to their respective state soil scientists?
I could take a shot, but Roy, I would say what report actually means, I'm not sure, but we would hope that most resource soil scientists, or there's kind of whoever they are supervised by, which a lot of times is an area conservationist. I mean, as far as their goals and productivity, that needs to be reported through that process. But I would think state soil scientists and a resource soil scientist should have some type of a communication, dialogue, to kind of know, encourage where that's going. And state soil scientists in that manner should have an opportunity for input into priorities that are being worked on by resource soil science, and help support it that way. Roy?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. It doesn't necessarily reflect the actual supervision. We work within whatever structure the state conservationist decides, how he puts his technical staff, although we do feel it's good that the resource soil scientists are very closely aligned with the state soil scientists, not administratively, technically there.
And I guess the only other point I would want to make on this is that certainly the encouragement that if, as resource soil scientists, you haven't been involved with tech teams, I would say you should ask some questions about how can you get involved and be a participant in that.
All right, our next question, the MLRA Soil Survey Office leaders is the chair of the technical team and have responsibility of leading and managing the activities of their soil survey office. Why are they not the management team? Why are they not on the management team?
I hadn't thought of it that way, so I have to pause. Mainly because if you're looking at managers, you're looking at who the customer is ultimately, being the states, and projects are designed under administratively the state conservationist and how the product's delivered and what their needs are. So the management team has remained in that order. Dan, you were former director of the division, acting chief.
I was thinking that looking at an MLRA Soil Survey office leader, I think is certainly has linkage to the management team in our sense here, but also they're managers of their soil survey office. That soil survey office has different staff on there, so they're managing that and their area. I think they're certainly part of a asset for contribution of information and report activities to the management team.
I mean, they're the ultimate managers within their soil survey office area. But bigger picture coordination of the regional office, which is more of an aggregation of all the technical teams involved in state soil science and other disciplines. That's a good question. I got to think about that.
Yeah.
Then we have just a follow-up comment here.
And I get that. That's fine. They I think are involved because they are presenting basically to the management team. So management team wouldn't be reviewing what these priorities are that are being proposed if that leader wasn't there to present them. So I think that's, to me, how their involvement, participating in those.
Yes, and I think that plays into the next question. Read that?
Well, yeah, I guess so. That's the one I was actually, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you were looking at it. Okay.
I was. I guess I didn't.
You didn't actually read it to the rest of the people.
No, I didn't. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
It was kind of a follow-up question, looks like, to the other one, but the MLRA Soil Survey Office leader needs to defend the tech team on projects, so they need to be involved with the management team.
Agreed.
Yes, and what they need to be doing is they're the ones actually presenting the projects to the management team. So at that point, that's where they do their defense. And the management team pretty much takes them all and helps prioritize them on which ones will be done first. So yeah, that was a good follow-up question.
And there's also another comment here. It's kind of related to that. It says soil survey office leaders can trickle up to the management teams through the soil survey regional directors. So through their supervisors, in that sense, they can be providing their direct involvement in the management team, or indirect.
Good point.
Yeah, so thank you for that individual.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we get some answers on the question board, so that's a good one.
I'll go ahead and read this next question on Part 608.
Okay. Go ahead, Roy.
Part 608H5, state soil scientists are to be the liaison to NCSS cooperators if their role is essentially equivalent with other non-NRCS cooperators after the revision. How could they substantially represent other cooperators for state or NRCS at the state office, soil survey office level, or AMA level? I'm not sure that their role is equivalent with the other people since they are the agency. NRCS is the lead of the National Cooperative Soil Survey. So as state soil scientists, they're the leader of the National Cooperative Soil Survey within their state. So the other people are cooperators that provide input. And so I guess that's the only way I know the answer, Cam.
I think that's works for me.
Yeah, they are the lead.
So I guess, someone's commenting that they begs the question then, the office leader needs to be listed as a member of the management team. I guess that's something you're going to look into.
I would say provide that, if you would provide that through a response back, as a response to the proposal, as a suggested.
Yes, and then again, the specific operating procedures, if that's what they would like to be done and it's agreed to by everybody, then I don't see why it cannot be done locally.
That's a good point.
And that'd be up to, we look at the traditional structure and it says additional members as needed. If the regional director and the state soil scientist, state resource conservationists, that's how they want to structure within their region, so be it, and they solidify that within their operating procedures. So I don't know. I'm not giving a firm answer that they can't be, I guess, since as I remember in the handbook, it allows for other members.
All right, well, not seeing any other questions, I want to thank our presenters today. The webinar is going to has been recorded and will be made available on our NSS, our National Soil Survey Center YouTube channel, and the link was provided on the webinar announcement that came out. But if you search for this topic on YouTube, you'll certainly come across it. The recordings are publicly available. And that will conclude our webinar. Thanks all.
Thank you for everybody attending.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to present.